Hello, my name is Michael Moore. I'm the Information Security Officer for the Maricopa County Recorder's Office, and with me today, I've got Nate Young, who is our Director of IT. First, I want to thank you, the listener, for watching this presentation and your concern about election security and your support of democracy. Next, I also want to thank DEF CON Voting Village for allowing us to do this presentation and for their support of election security and pushing forward the sector. We're here talking about how Maricopa County conducts elections and how we secure them. Elections are the lifeblood of democracy. Voter confidence is paramount. If people lose faith in the system, then they won't participate in it. MDM, or misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, is being used to attack elections. So we're going to go through a few topics. First, we're going to talk about how elections work here at Maricopa. We're going to review the events of the 2020 general election and how they affected us and how we responded to them, how we're increasing security, as well as threats to elections, and ending with how you can help.
Maricopa County is the fourth largest county in the United States with approximately 4.4 million residents and represents over 61% of the entire population of the state of Arizona. Interestingly, Maricopa County has the second largest voting population in the United States with approximately 2.6 million registered voters. Los Angeles County is the largest in the US with 5.6 million registered voters. Facilitating jurisdictional, state, and federal elections for millions of voters poses some tremendous challenges, but also represents opportunities to make voting easier, secure, and rewarding. Arizona state election law allows counties to establish early voting programs up to 27 days prior to an election day. Over 90% of Maricopa voters choose early voting, and there are a couple of ways they do this. Mail-in voting was established in Arizona in 1991, and it is now the preferred option for most voters. A voter is sent their ballot in the mail a few weeks prior to Election Day. The voter fills out their ballot in the comfort of their own home and returns their ballot either by dropping it off at the post office or using one of hundreds of drop box locations throughout the valley. Popularity of mail-in voting rose steadily over the past 31 years, but it is now a prime target for election-denying groups that claim mail-in voting is easy to steal and cheat. This couldn't be further from the truth, considering Maricopa County usually has over 10,000 variations of the ballot per election. We also have a robust voter signature verification process before any ballot is tallied. Next, voters can vote up to 27 days prior to an election by using a vote center. Before vote centers, Maricopa voters would need to cast their in-person ballots at a single designated location within their voting precinct. This was inconvenient for voters who worked during the day and couldn't get back to their home precincts before the polls closed. With vote centers, a voter can find their nearest voting location next to their work and check in using real-time check-in stations, and their ballot is printed on demand there on site. This is a great option for people who either appreciate the experience voting in person, but don't necessarily want the inconvenience of voting at a designated precinct location. Maricopa County also has in-person voting on Election Day by using the same vote center model, but with the addition of on-site tabulation using precinct-based tabulators. These machines run a voter's ballot through the scanner, and then results are uploaded directly to the central tabulation system at the close of the election that night. All registered voters in the state of Arizona can vote, even if they are not in the country. UACAVA, or the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, allows voting options for military personnel and civilians living abroad to cast their ballots. These UACAVA votes are transferred to ballot paper, then tabulated on our digital tabulation process. After seeing how many great and convenient options voters have in Maricopa County, some of you may say, these voting options are great and all, but how do we know these ballots are counted properly and the systems are secure? The answer to that question is Maricopa County isolates the Dominion Election Management System, which we call the EMS, using an air-gapped network. This EMS network is completely self-contained with no external connections to the internet or the rest of the county network. Paper ballots are brought into the Ballot Tabulation Center, which we call the BTC, at the Maricopa County Tabulation Facility and scanned in using our high-speed optical scanners that are designed to read the markings a voter makes on their ballot and process them into data. The EMS system and the air-gapped network architecture is certified by the Election Assistance Commission, or EAC for short, that places strict standards on what and how a ballot tabulation system can function. Without this certification, Maricopa County would not be able to conduct elections in the state of Arizona. The tabulation facility also uses a set of live streaming cameras that are available for public review on elections.maricopa.gov. You can go there right now to see what's going on in the building in real time. Maricopa County uses a state-required logic and accuracy testing process to ensure the election management system, or EMS for short, can tally the ballot races properly and present accurate results. The logic and accuracy testing uses a batch of ballots that were already known with the expected outcomes. These ballots are run through the EMS and the results are compared with the expected results from the test batch. Logic and accuracy tests are run internally for all elections, and the Arizona Secretary of State's office will conduct testing on their own ballot batches to ensure the system is accurate. The test ballots tabulated during these batches must match with the control numbers before an election can begin. After an election is over, the Arizona State election statute requires bipartisan election boards to randomly select batches of ballots that will be hand counted. The tallies from the hand counts are then compared with the digital tallies from the same ballot selections. If they match, the election can be certified. These processes, procedures, and controls were in place during the November 2020 general election that had Democratic Party nominee Joe Biden running against Republican Party incumbent President Donald Trump. This election saw almost 2.1 million ballots cast out of a possible 2.6 million voters, which resulted in a fantastic voter turnout of over 80%. 92% of the votes cast were using one of the early voting options described earlier, with the remaining 8% of voting on election day. In case you were wondering, this fun little guy is Phil the Ballot. He was used in the major marketing campaigns and voter education efforts in 2020. Phil has his own section on our elections.maricopa.gov website and on our Maricopa Elections YouTube page. He also has a life-size costume that an election employee wears to get out the vote efforts on our promotional events. Phil knows a lot of fantastic voting facts, and you can learn a thing or two from him, so go check him out. Arizona election laws allow Maricopa County to tabulate ballots prior to releasing the results on election night. For the November 3rd general election, Maricopa Elections had processed many early ballots and posted the results at 8 p.m. Then this happened.
Arizona, where pro-Trump demonstrators gathered outside the building where votes are being counted in Maricopa County. At this hour, Joe Biden maintains a slight lead in that state, although the race has narrowed a bit.
Supporters of President Donald Trump voiced their frustration late Wednesday with the ballot counting process outside the Maricopa County Elections Department. The protests were largely peaceful, but police dressed in full tactical gear blocked entries to ensure the safety of those counting votes inside. They escorted employees to their cars once their shift was over. About a third of the crowd appeared to be armed, and many expressed fears that their votes were not being counted.
These protesters thought President Trump couldn't lose unless there was cheating, and the 2020 presidential election was actively being stolen in the tabulation facility. Protesters spent almost a week crowding the parking lot of the tabulation building, chanting, "Count the votes," and "Fox News sucks." The reason for the Fox News chant was due to the fact that Fox News had already called the state of Arizona for Biden on election night, November 3rd. To understand the situation better, you must know the tabulation building was open to the public prior to the protesters massing outside. For a week, Maricopa Elections employees and volunteers had to enter the building under armed police escort. On November 30th, the Arizona results were certified, with Joe Biden winning Arizona by approximately 40,000 votes in Maricopa and by 10,000 votes total for the whole state of Arizona. Maricopa County had to defend the certified results against many lawsuits proclaiming cheating and fraud. None of these lawsuits succeeded in court, and no credible evidence was ever provided. In December of 2020, the Arizona Senate, led by Senate President Karen Fann, submitted a subpoena to the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. This subpoena demanded all 2.1 million paper ballots, $2.8 million worth of Dominion voting equipment, which was decertified, and we had to buy that all over again. All the servers and equipment associated with the voter registration process, over 50 terabytes of election data and ballot images, and all Maricopa County routers. The list of items was long and were eventually delivered to the Arizona Senate on April 2021. This started a 6-month-long audit process where cybersecurity vendor CyberNinjas would attempt to hand count all 2.1 million ballots and forensically analyze the computer equipment. The auditing methods, election knowledge, and overall capability of the CyberNinjas was called into question several times as issues with their audit processes were made public. The estimated cost of this audit was over $10 million, which doesn't count any incurred costs by Maricopa County itself. During the audit, several fanciful theories about cheating and fraud were started, with a few taking off like rockets on social media platforms, print and television news outlets, and in the dark recesses of the internet. It felt like a full-time job trying to debunk wild theory after wild theory, many of which were created simply due to a fundamental lack of how elections worked. Here are some of the more interesting headlines that came out of the audit. Sharpiegate is still in the news today and gets revitalized every couple of months. The claim is when Sharpies are used on the ballots, the ink bleeds through and sends the ballot into adjudication, and then Trump votes were changed to Biden. This is 100% false, and the Arizona Department of Justice investigated and found zero evidence. An interesting claim that China flew planes full of ballots that were injected into swing state elections.
Well, is that there's accusations that 40,000 ballots were flown in into Arizona, and it was stuffed into the box. And what they're doing is to find out if there's bamboo in the paper.
The cyber ninjas looked into this one by checking ballots for bamboo fibers. To no one's surprise, they didn't find any. Italygate was a ridiculous claim that Italian satellites hacked into the air-gapped voting systems and changed Trump votes to Biden. There was a movie produced during the audit called The Deep Rig, where Cyber Ninjas CEO Doug Logan was interviewed and expounded on a number of conspiracy theories that his team was investigating. According to the Cyber Ninjas, there was illegal votes everywhere for all kinds of reasons, all of which were debunked by election experts pretty quickly. Another movie called 2000 Mules used the very real concept of ballot muling, where someone illegally collects ballots and submits them. Muling is illegal in Arizona, but it's not a systemic problem like the 2000 Mules movie tries to make it out to be. Not to mention, the movie never actually shows anyone dropping off any illegal ballots. In September 2021, the Cyber Ninjas released their report, which stated Joe Biden won by even more votes than what Arizona certified. We thought this would have been the end of the audit, but claims of cheating and fraud and treason permeated the nightly news still. We responded to claims in the Cyber Ninja report with a report of our own. We called it Correcting the Record. On January 5th, 2022, the Maricopa Board of Supervisors, the County Recorder Stephen Richer, and Maricopa election officials presented a 93-page long Correcting the Record document that debunked the false claims Cyber Ninjas professed as truths. Over the last 6 months, Correcting the Record had been reviewed by other election experts and people who knew what they were doing in the fields of cybersecurity and forensics. Not a single credible expert has come forward to say the content within Correcting the Record was inaccurate. With that presentation, we closed the book on the Arizona Senate audit and the 2020 general election. With the audit out of the way, we turned our focus to how we can improve processes and controls and the voter experience for the incoming 2020 election cycle, which was right around the corner. Through our continuous improvement initiatives, we revamped our 24/7 live streaming camera system to include 18 total cameras. We increased our physical security controls. The tabulation building is no longer accessible to the public. We also installed an iron fence in front of the building where the protesters stood in 2020. We added more transparency and communications options to voters by adding ballot status updates through their cell phones. We added 50 more vote centers locations compared to 2020, which is more convenient to the voter and gives the voter more options to cast their ballots. We also looked into insider threats and what they would pose to the integrity of the voting process. No matter how well your hiring and vetting process is, there's always the possibility that someone in the elections department with knowledge and access has an ulterior motive. Whether it's activism, seeking attention, or good intentions which are executed in the wrong way, an insider threat can erode confidence in the voting process. To combat these threats, we introduced a number of new processes. The buddy system is where we require at least 2 people to be together within critical areas of the building. For 2020, we only focused on USB and Ethernet port blockers for our Dominion election management system equipment. In 2022, we included port blockers for other ports like HDMI, DisplayPort, and USB-C. We also included a lock for active Ethernet ports so they can't be unplugged and replaced with suspect cables. The port blocker should be enough to secure the Dominion EMS equipment, but we added another layer of physical security. All EMS computers are now inside metal security enclosures with a single port for cable pass-through. This not only provides another layer of physical security, but it increases the ingress steps someone must take to try and compromise these devices. We also reviewed various 2020 processes for voter registration, early voting, and tabulation to identify areas where we can add checks and balances. All of these improvements to the voting process from year to year helps us create the most secure and reliable election possible. Thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back over to Michael to discuss security partners and how we identify MDM.
Here you can see our Election Command Center. It's our central hub of operations supporting elections. During a major election, this room will be filled with about 30 people. We also have threat liaison officers who respond rapidly to threats, and they connect us to the ACTIC. The ACTIC is our primary point of contact when it comes to threats to elections. It's a fusion center. It ties together local and federal law enforcement. It's a one-stop shop to report to them, and then they get it to the right entity, whatever is reported. We also work closely with DHS and CISA. They have provided physical security assessments of our facilities. They provide us with multiple free cybersecurity products, and in the past 2 years, they provide us with grants in excess of $100,000 each. We also work closely with the FBI Election Task Force, who maintains situational awareness of threats to elections, and a majority of election-related threats are routed to them from the ACTIC. We work with a lot of local law enforcement, predominantly the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, or MCSO. They do so much, including physical security at our polling locations, marked and unmarked vehicles, as well as delivery escort.
Safely, efficiently, and honestly.
I think that if we look at the history of the world, and if we look around the world today, we should pretty easily tell that democracy is not the default setting. It doesn't just happen because we set up a form of government. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work from a lot of partners, and we're lucky that we have such a fantastic partner in the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office.
Our county's information security team is actively monitoring social media and provides us with daily threat briefings. They've also created an excellent product to support elections. During critical election time periods, they spin up a command center where they monitor social media, network health, as well as any security events targeting the county or elections. We're notified of anything critical instantly, and we receive hourly updates. Skepticism is a good thing, but don't turn your skepticism of a system into a blind trust in claims to the contrary. For example, if someone made claims about election security and you agreed with them, still demand that they provide some source material to prove what they're saying is true. Now let's talk about MDM. Misinformation is wrong information, but not necessarily on purpose, versus disinformation is a flat-out lie. They know what they're saying is wrong, and they're saying it on purpose with the intention of tricking the listener. Malinformation, it's like disinformation, but they take legitimate content and then they manipulate it into something that's dishonest. Elections are not about winners, they're about losers accepting that they had a fair chance and a graceful transfer of power. Irreparable damage has been done to a significant percentage of voters. By eroding faith in our systems, democracy is literally under attack. At this point, our foreign adversaries don't even need to put in much effort. We're doing this to ourselves. If things cool off, it's trivial for them to inject fresh MDM. Who do you think benefits most from the polarization and division that we're experiencing? A hacker is someone who looks at a system and exploits it. They see what it's intended to do, and then they cause it to do something else. Freedom of speech is being hacked. Let's look at the current MDM threat landscape. You can see we've got traditional media, social media, and public officials. All of these entities are part of the problem, but they're also part of the solution. Some traditional media sources are actively spreading MDM, while others are combating it. In Arizona, we have elected officials that are spreading at least misinformation. It's hard to know for sure if they know what they're saying is wrong to say that it is active disinformation. Meanwhile, our leadership is standing behind proven processes and staff. MDM is also driving threats of our elections officials and our elected officials. When the same type of sources are both the problem and the solution, how do you know who to trust? Well, the question I ask is, do they provide evidence of their claims? Also, how do they handle correcting their statements when they're wrong? Do they just double down, or do they retract their statements and admit that they made a mistake? Next, let's talk about MDM and how it has affected Maricopa County. First, misinformation. The Cyber Ninjas in their report claimed that over 74,000 phantom ballots were cast. This claim was incorrectly calculated by comparing two unrelated reports that are used by the political parties for get out the vote initiatives. Obviously, any comparison of these files to find the total number of early voters would lead to inaccurate results. Here you can see several pictures from our 24/7, 365 live streaming cameras. These are always broadcasting to our website at elections.maricopa.gov, and you can go there today and view them for yourself. Disinformation can be difficult to quantify. The difference between it and misinformation is that the speaker knows what they're doing. So it can be hard to get that level of attribution. Maricopa County Elections has provided tours of our tabulation facility and processes to elected officials who are continuing to spread claims that have been disproven, even though they were informed of our standards, processes, and controls. One of the better responses to these false claims on Twitter was, Tell me you don't know what routers are without telling me you don't know what routers are. Or do they know what routers are and they're saying what they're saying on purpose? Next, let's take a look at malinformation. So this tweet is still live today, in spite of the fact that we've reported it multiple times. You can see in this picture, this is a screenshot from our election management server room. It's made to look as if there is a paper posted on the wall that lists EMS password and router password. This is way more complicated than it need be for a simple troll. First, they are familiar with the nomenclature EMS password, or election management system. They also are mentioning a router password. If you're familiar with the dialogue with the Senate's audit, they keep asking for a router. There is no router in there. So someone is aware of what an EMS is, and they're aware of what a router is. There's also the Maricopa County logo in the top right. And this is all for a very small picture that's been photoshopped behind the glass in the server room. This is easily disproven. You can take a look at our logs of the video and see that there's no paper on the wall. If you put this picture into a photo forensics tool, you can see that the bitmap compression rate, it does not match. It lights up like Christmas. We've been talking about MDM and how it affects Maricopa County. I'm concerned about the next level threat out there, and that's synthetic content. You may know it more commonly as deepfakes or even cheapfakes. The barrier is being greatly reduced to create believable looking fake content. The average citizen doesn't want to research every single thing, and it's impossible to know what's real and what's not. It's going to get even more challenging as this thing becomes commonplace. We can see the Ukrainian president. There was a video directing him, that was imitating him giving commands to soldiers to sit down and surrender. This was what I would call a cheap fake, but if you were in a war zone looking at this on a mobile device, it's convincing enough. The next one is a speech from President Nixon, which is a moon disaster speech. This one, even though I knew going in was not real, I actually felt an emotional reaction to.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery. But they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice.
And then lastly, there was a public service announcement created by Jordan Peele of President Obama saying things that he never would say. This one is perhaps a little bit more humorous, but it's deeply concerning because it is very believable.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. It's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources.
One of my favorite quotes is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. In elections, we want to go far. Democracy, as a nation, we all want to go far. We need to go together. So how can you help? The first thing is vote, and vote informed. I've never considered myself to be a single issue voter before, but now it's, does this candidate spread MDM? Are they misinformed constantly and they refuse to change their stance? Do I feel like they should know better at a certain point and they're still spreading disinformation? That's just a deal breaker for me, and I recommend that it be a deal breaker for you as well. Next, please volunteer to be a poll worker. We need the help. We need the bodies. We're going to have to hire thousands of people to run major elections. Some of these people will believe that elections are corrupt, that they're being stolen. When you come at something that, as you're righting a wrong that's been done to you, you feel free and able to do anything. We need people that we can count on that aren't going to try and throw a wrench in the works and that are willing to report up the proper chain if they see someone messing with something that seems wrong. Demand intellectual integrity of yourself and others. Everyone is susceptible to confirmation bias. We all have our beliefs. When you hear something bad about someone that you like, you don't want to believe it. We have close friends, family, leaders that we trust that largely share our beliefs. It can be difficult to challenge them, when we think that what they're saying might not be correct. But if we don't, that's called groupthink. And if you recall, that's what blew up the Challenger. People were afraid to speak up. They were more concerned about fitting in with the group than speaking what they thought to be truth. And then lastly, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If someone says something that seems outrageous, what is the source of their information? Can they prove it? Is it for sure real? Or is it just something that they think or feel? Demand that evidence. We've gone over a lot of material today, and I hope it answered some of your questions. If you'd like to learn more, please visit justthefacts.vote. That's our elections website that goes through all of the various myths that we've debunked. CISA.gov also has a rumor control that has a lot of great resources that talks about rumor versus reality. And then lastly, lostnotstolen.org is a conservative case that Trump lost and Biden won the 2020 presidential election. Again, thank you very much for your